Good evening, everyone. I am your host, Jason Miles, and welcome to another episode of This is Revolution Podcast. If you are new to the channel, welcome. Hope you have a good time. If you are a returning listener or subscriber, thank you for coming back. Love you guys. You are the fuel in the TIR engine that keeps us going. I do have some help tonight. I threw out a bit of, I don't want to say a lifeline, but when I got a chance to do this show, this all comes from Danny Besner. Just tweeted out, I'd rather be talking about college radio with, and he wrote the person's Twitter name, our guest today, Katherine Rye Jewell. And I was like, well, I'd rather be talking about that than whatever it was I was going to talk about today on Thursday. And I booked the show. The back and forth I had on Twitter with our guest was really good. And I said, I can't do this show without Conan because, like me, he's also benefited from college radio. But I want you guys to know this. If Conan was like interviewing Ice Cube or some shit like that, something that was like right up my alley, he'd never bring me in. Never do it. You're like, hey, I'm interviewing Jason's favorite band, the Massive Attack, and fuck him. But he is here with me today, so I'm actually glad to have him here with me today. Please welcome my good friend. You know him as the host of Protonic Reversal. You also may know him as the man behind the madness that is Conan Neutron and Secret Friends. Please welcome Conan Neutron.
Put me on blast, man. Damn, dude. Get lit up like a Christmas tree in this show.
No, I just wanted to see if I could make you giggle in the virtual.
Oh yeah. It's an audience of one, and it's me.
I know you didn't get a chance to read the book.
Definitely not, but
that's okay.
I usually do. I actually almost always read the book when I have someone on.
Conan,
not this week.
If anyone needed to bring in, like, there's a few things I hope you bring me in for. You're like, oh man, they're doing all this West Coast hip hop trivia from the years of 1989 to 1997. Who can I call? You know, I hope you don't call Tony. You know, I hope you call me.
The specificity with which you mentioned that is deeply hilarious to me. It's like, okay, so those things only. Great, I got you covered. Yeah,
you know, I'm like, I'm going to talk about college radio and white guys and jingly guitars. I got to bring in Conan.
Yeah. Let's bring in Neutron. Yeah, he'll figure it out. It's right up his alley. It's a catnip for him.
You came in like Eddie from the 5 Heartbeats. You just slid in at the end as the intro music is playing.
Yeah, well, I was literally doing my show up there. What am I doing?
I thought you were doing your show. Yeah. I'm not even gonna lie. I didn't contact you at all. Just to let you guys know how I just knew again.
You just
put the trivia from 1989 to 1997.
It's like Batman, but there's just an atomic symbol that's up in the sky.
It's
like, oh, my city needs me.
It was just a cardigan sweater,
right? Yeah.
And a Rickenbacker bass.
Yeah, some thrift store pants. Yeah, absolutely.
Thrift store. That's all that came out. And Conan was like, I think I'm needed.
My people.
Clarity to the show.
I gotta go.
But there's definitely some insight that I think you have.
Sure.
We're you and I are the same age, and we're from slightly different. You moved to the Bay so quick.
Yeah, 95.
Like right when we graduated, you moved.
Yeah.
So you came down right when we graduated, and that was a pretty vibrant college radio scene. We had
Calix. Oh, it was popping. Yeah, Calix is
KZSU.
KZSU. What else? KDVS in Davis, really good.
Which was the station in Pleasant Hill that was the high school station that played metal all the time?
Oh,
you know what station I'm talking about?
I do. Yeah. I do not remember the call letters.
You know, let's look. I have the
got
intro to read. Let me read the intro because our
Okay.
guest is waiting. See, the time is of the essence.
Why are these men trying to figure
Yes, fuck these guys.
What are these
Oh, you men.
How yo. Yeah, well, but the important thing is that, you know, it was, again, seeing the evolution of it. We're now, like, I still send Secret Friends stuff out to college
really?
radio. Yes. And what really ends up happening is there's like one or two like true freaks that like will vibe with it and they'll play in their show, tag you on social media, and you know, and like they have shows that are usually niche, just like how, and we can talk about this in the main show too, but it's not like how it was, because it used to be like that was the avenue of discovery, right?
Yes.
And that it's hard to. I was just talking to Steve Bartek of Oingo Boingo about this literally 45 minutes ago, earlier in my show, that, you know, when they did that farewell concert, they put it out on VHS, they put it out on DVD, which was a new format at the time, because it wasn't the YouTube era. You couldn't just like, you know, type in like Oingo Boingo live and then see like, oh, there's them at the US Fest. There's them at like, you know, this other, you know, like all of these like crazy things that we have access to. It was like, no, you have to like buy a thing to put into your, buy a tape that you put in this tape playing machine, and then you can see them play this. And just that, and that the fact that like, how would you even find out about Oingo Boingo? Oh, well, there was a college radio station that played Weird Science. Okay, cool, you know, right on. You know, oh, then like I heard Dead Man's Party in a movie somewhere. Like, avenues of discovery. College radio still is an avenue of discovery, but it's so, I mean, just everything is balkanized now. But like college radio is just the niche shows, which would be like the, you know, the radio equivalent of like 120 minutes in MTV or something along those lines, right? That's everything now. Everything is the niche shows, and so because of that, you will get engagement that is like, oh, you're getting like those true freaks that like live and breathe music engaging with your stuff, but that's all you're getting. Like, it's not going to be like how it was, where like, oh, this is the show, hey man, between 8 to 10 there's this cat, I don't even know what he or she looks like, but they play the coolest stuff, and like you'll hear all these things that you never heard. It's going to blow your mind. You're going to be sitting there finger up on the record button.
Yeah.
I remember that.
Yeah, I do. Yes, and I found a lot of groups that way, right?
Hell yeah.
You could call or request anything back in the day, but let's read the introduction. Welcome to our show. Today we have the pleasure of speaking with professor and author Katherine Rye Jewell about her fascinating new book, Live from the Underground, which explores the rise of college radio. Unlike typical homages to white indie rock and obscure fringe artists, Jewell provides a materialist historiography that examines how college radio helped shape the music landscape. In Live from the Underground, Jewell writes, college radio offered an ideal venue for these attitudes. It could never overtake commercial radio, remaining scarce and subaltern. Pop culture rejects sought sanctuary at these stations by the 1990s. Protected by institutional homes and non-commercial licenses, these stations operated in the public's airwaves for educational purposes. Such missions offered useful cover for DJs seeking the weird, the unheard, or the underappreciated. Such music might never reach or actively defy mainstream audiences. Many participants were content with remaining on the outside. In the underground, stations developed devoted listener bases of engaged music fans and lured college students who didn't quite fit in on campus. Community DJs turned to college radio too, seeking purchase on the nation's airwaves, or at least, however, far from the usually low wattage collegiate signal reached. By the early 1990s, college radio had earned a national identity that evoked generational dissatisfaction with pop culture, even as it remained deeply conversant with it. These signals did not offer alternative voices to willing audiences, yet college radio's collective status as an alternative or counter-hegemonic medium is debatable. Virtually all elements of the college radio model, educational mission, anti-commercialism, funding mechanisms, organizational structures, professional practices, content, or audience relationships were contested in one way or another after the 1970s. Some stations explored the furthest fringes of musical expression, but these were missions shaped historically and through conflict. Numerous DJs sought careers in the news, music, and media industries. Not all stations devoted programming to music, lacking broad commercial appeal, but these signals and their participants also shaped the nation's landscape of college radio. College radio status as an alternative medium is thus tenuous, even if in aggregate or individually, these stations possess disruptive potential. That is from our guest today, Katherine Rye Jewell, who is a historian and a professor at Fitchburg State University. Her work delves into the intersection of business, politics, and culture. Please give a big TIR round of applause for Katherine Rye Jewell.
Welcome.
Thank you so much for having me.
Sorry for all the silly guy banter, but
I apologize for nothing.
It's very college radio.
Were we fair with our depiction of college radio?
Absolutely. I mean, you hit right on this idea of the fragmentation that college radio perhaps helped foment, and kind of the current landscape that it sits within now, which it's still weird. It's still out there. It's still amateur. It's still populated with all these music freaks looking for something new, but it's not the only game in town anymore, so to speak. And I see some questioning of the nostalgia trap that I definitely had to go through as somebody who is in a love of college radio. I
just did a show with another professor friend of ours and writer who just started his own publishing house, Mike Watson. His book is called Hungry Ghosts in the Machine, which is about the trap of nostalgia in digital capitalism. I don't know if you saw this recently. The Gen Xers, men Conan and I's age, have overtaken children as the #1 purchasers of action figures. So nostalgia and the internet
I have no idea what you're talking about, sir.
It's working, right? It's working.
That's not even all of them, by the way.
So this show on college radio, which I think, I don't know how this is going to go over with a lot of people that watch this show. Is it going to be a trip down memory lane for these guys, which it will be, or is it going to be a real materialist approach? From your introduction, it felt like you didn't want to have that kind of love affair with 80s college radio, which is where everybody kind of stays when that whole they're a college radio band, the college radio charts come to be.
How many shows were called Left of the Dial after that?
What made you want to go deeper? Is it just the fact that you are a historian and you have to go deeper?
Yeah. So the sad story is my alma mater, it's right behind me, which I had a great education. But I was a college DJ at Vanderbilt, and this is the late 90s. I was a history major. I was an anthropology major. And I went off and did that. And I was into like policy and like just really like kind of wonky political history. And that's what I went off and did. But then in 2011, Vanderbilt sold our radio station. And so Vanderbilt still very much touts the fact that they have radio and podcasting, but they no longer have an FM signal, which was a 19,000 watt powerful signal in Music City, Nashville, that was deeply connected, sometimes problematically, to the wider community. Sometimes, there are lots of things that happen at the station over time. And so I started to question, well, why is it that I'm so heartbroken at this FM signal disappearing in what appears to be this era when it doesn't really matter as much anymore to have access to radio? I argue now that it does. And so I started delving into, well, where do these stations even come from? How bizarre is it that a bunch of university administrators ever let 18, 19, 20-year-olds have the reign of radio stations?
Yeah, right.
With a reach of like hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people in some cases. And so I started delving into, all right, what were the politics? What were the regulatory origins of these things? And then how did college radio become this thing? And what I ended up realizing is that 80s moment, it was so short lived of a time, and that college radio, rather than being this kind of perfect little refuge outside of the mainstream, was always this place of conflict where politics was happening. And the 80s, it's no accident that college radio assumes this really beloved position in the mindsets of Gen Xers in particular, but in the 1980s and the 1990s, when you have these national culture wars raging, because it's a place where people found like they could have some access to media. They could have some say in the sounds that shaped their daily lives, because, as y'all are noticing, that access, that media scarcity, was a real thing. I think we in our wealth of digital access now, we kind of forget how hard it was to get access to music, or even just
Yes.
knew what the next thing was going to be.
I mean, I still think it's hard to get access to music. It's just everywhere. I just don't know what's cool and what's not, because
Filters, right? Filters. That's
it's
what's
really
about.
hard. Like, because I'm such a small person on Spotify, it'll tell you like, oh, you like this band? Here's another piece of shit band that no one listens to. You might dig them too. And I started my recommendation started to be other smaller bands. And so I started saying, oh, some of these guys are really good. And that kind of takes me back to this moment of tuning into CalX any time of day.
Yeah.
And you were going to hear random music. And some people did workout shows, right? As we got older, especially in the 90s, there were like hip hop shows and stuff like that. Like, I'm going to play this kind of music that I dig. But as you talk about it in the book, college radio is devoid of the traditional radio format of the daytime guy and the drive time guy. You want to talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, college radio is really dominated by the block format, which develops really in the 1970s as basically what we think of as public radio, and what becomes NPR and the kind of the syndicated kind of highbrow educational stations. That starts to diverge from what we think of as educational radio or college radio. I also kind of include community radio in conversation with college radio, because it's a certain way of doing radio that also uses a block format. And those stations, there might be a day parting kind of structure to some. It kind of runs the gamut of stations on the left hand of the dial that have these educational licenses between 88.1 and 91.9, although there's commercial college stations as well. There's AM, there's carrier current still throughout this era. But that block format begins to be a place where these upcoming genres of music that aren't getting played on commercial radio at all get a foothold. And so it starts out being just anything alternative to what's on commercial FM, as those stations like the WBCNs of the world, which is the big Boston commercial, which was very freeform and really, they're the ones primarily playing freeform in the 60s and 70s. They start to format in the mid 70s. And so colleges and those stations become the ones that are more freeform. But what that really meant is that they would divide up the blocks into whatever DJs wanted to play. So you could be freeform, but you might still have a formatted show. You might be playing Haitian Creole news programs, or, religious broadcasts on Sunday morning, or gospel music, or jazz, or folk, anything that didn't have enough of an audience to justify a commercial signal, a demographic, that would appeal to advertisers. And so it's that alternativeness of the 1970s that provides this space for, say, a punk show to come on very, very, very late at night. We might think that college radio had this kind of perfect symbiosis with punk, but it took a while actually for punk to get a real foothold and association with the kind of aesthetic of college radio. And a lot of college DJs in the late 1970s they wanted to still kind of, get the let out and play classic rock or Styx, but they just might be playing, the next cut off the record or the B-side. They still wanted to sound kind of like top 40, and they really clashed with the punks and the new wavers and eventually the hardcore shows and that kind of thing. So the block schedule and basically just giving somebody 2 hours to kind of play around with radio was how college radio develops this reputation. That's not to say that these stations didn't have rules. Obviously, the FCC provides some rules, but some stations might have a heavy, medium, and light rotation. They might emphasize new music. They might have a show devoted totally to local music. That really varied based on where you were and what station and whatever mission you were tied to with the university. And that's kind of the amazing part of this educational radio thing, that administrators allowed this to go on because students were getting hands-on experience. They were running these things, getting that kind of experience running the board, being on air, selling ads in some cases, or underwriting, or just managing people or working with record labels. They saw it as educational, but they also saw it as a way of connecting their academic programs to the wider public. And so there's always this tension between kind of the town and gown service of these signals because they occupy the public airwaves. And so people outside of the university also have a claim to these stations. They're there to be educational, to have a public service function, which gives listeners in surrounding areas like a real say, or at least sense that they should have a say in what's going on. And that's really what generates a lot of the controversy at these stations, and why I consider them a real site of the culture wars in the 80s and the 90s. Because rather than these stations staking out some kind of outpost on one side of the culture wars, it's actually a place where all of these different people can come together and try to figure out, what do we value collectively as a community in a location, in a kind of hyper local environment? What is that soundscape gonna be like? What's it gonna sound like? Who's gonna get purchase on that? And that's where you get the real fights of college radio. It was a very emotional place sometimes,
Right.
and it wasn't always administrators who were causing the controversy.
Well, and you still do, because you get to the PSAs that you have to read. The clothing drive is happening, and and there's this other thing happening here and there. I mean, I was on for the last tour we did. We did like an interview with a guy who's very friendly to our kinds of music and whatnot. And I always forget, it's like, oh yeah, there's all these things that, like, this is a community station. This is the community that is serving, and that goes beyond just, playing. And it is a service, believe me, playing my music to them and blasting my words out, because it's if it's going to be part of a community, it needs to be part of a community. And you don't get that from a Spotify playlist.
No.
The
emptiness of the Spotify playlist is so worth. That's the new pay to play, which is Spotify playlist, is, I do. This is sad when you miss the days of old pay for play commercial radio.
Payola used to be better. Yeah, no.
Whatever happened to a suitcase of blow and money? Whatever happened to the good old days of that?
Well, because the same people that would be motivated to start a college radio show and like that type of obsessive music freak, they're like, I have to share this awesome music with people. Nowadays, it's much easier for them. I'm just going to make this playlist and put it up, and link to it on TikTok or whatever people are doing, which is sad, because again, you're using all these walled gardens. There's all these walled gardens that are designed to extract people's interest as value. It's the opposite of community radio, right? It's like the polar opposite of it, and that's there's an entire generation now that's come up as that's the only way that they know.
I do have a question for both of you, and please answer this honestly.
Oh,
hold on.
I Can't wait to hear what comes
I
next.
want you two back and in the hot seat. This is the hot seat position.
All right.
When you two were younger,
yeah,
I'm not going to ask your age, Kate. Conan and I are both 46.
Yeah.
Did you record mixtapes? And then did you have the ability to talk over them and act like a DJ? Because if so, just be honest. Because I did. I'm not going to lie.
Hell yeah. Hell yeah and hell yeah. Look, my man, I run a podcast. Where do you think that started?
Kate, did you do that?
I turned 45 4 days ago.
Nice.
So yes, I absolutely did that.
Get these youngins off the air.
Happy birthday, by the way.
Thank you. Yeah, born in 1979, right? One of a good year in music. And I did the thing where I grew up in Vermont, and so I didn't have college radio I had the Dartmouth station, which was a commercial station.
Bernie Sanders didn't give you college radio?
We're going to get college radio for all.
Everybody in Vermont.
I met him when I was 17, and I volunteered for his campaign.
Awesome.
I have stories.
Was he doing this weird public access show where he goes around and interviews random people? Because I love that, by the way.
He was just looking for the press. I was like starry-eyed. He like dashed all of my dreams of ever like joining college. So I thought, it's kind of
Oh, man, Bernie's getting lit up worse than I was at the beginning of the Damn. Sanders,
it's a very innocent moment in the life of young Kate Jewell. But I would call it the radio station to request. I remember we requested Blister in the Sun.
Sure.
Which I didn't have on, I couldn't go down. I didn't have a record store nearby. Like the nearest record store was like an hour and a half away. And the only place I could buy music was the place in West Lebanon, New Hampshire that sold cassette singles. So I had a weird amount of cassette singles.
Yes. I remember them all.
Damn.
I had Danzig's Mother on cassette single.
That is what's up. I love it.
What was the B-side?
I do not
Mother
remember.
Live.
Mother Live.
I had the weirdest. I had En Vogue on cassette single. I had at least two. I had so much stuff. So many.
Man, people
singles.
really hated your mixtapes.
Yeah.
Bipolar K with one of those goddamn mixtapes again.
So yeah. Answering the question. So the mixtapes, you did do the mixtapes.
Oh yeah. And I would request songs to get them on a mixtape if I was making them. Or a lot of it was from my dad's record collection, and that I would mix in. But I remember when I requested Blister in the Sun, I recorded the DJ introducing it because it was a request and dedication.
Sure. Yeah.
And I just remember I was painting a ceiling with a friend of mine, and we called up and we were like so giggly, like, oh my God, we're on the radio.
Yeah.
And he said, and it's like ingrained in my memory to this day because I listened to the mixtape so much that I memorized the DJ with the song. And he said, this one goes out to Kate and her friend. They've been painting all day. I think the fumes are starting to get to those young ladies.
That's awesome. So that's part of your experience is having that dedication. Was he doing it? Because there's a while before the vocals hit in. Did he hit the post on it? Which everyone knows that term, right? I mean, I know you all know, but yeah, like where if you have an like longer instrumental section, then you just do like a talk over, whatever. $5 off chicken at the Piggly Wiggly. Say the phrase that pays, like whatever it is you're supposed to be like advertising or just sometimes people just do it just for the hell of it because it's like a game you can do. That the key is you say the call letters right as the vocals hit.
Yeah. What was your station called?
Oh, you're the imaginary station. Oh my God. Let's see. WRST worst. I didn't have any illusions about what I was doing.
I do want to ask. So you do talk about college radio beyond again R.E.M. because I think for a lot of people, college radio begins and ends. The idea of it, maybe with R.E.M. and it kind of ends towards the end of 120 minutes in MTV. And I do want to get into MTV and college radio and how those two things kind of worked with each other. But you also talk about hip hop in the early days of college radio as well. Can you tell us a little bit about how there was actually big time hip hop stations in the college market that broke artists like you talk about Common and Public Enemy.
Yeah, a lot. So college students were getting into whatever was new, and a lot of college students, had access to these signals, and hip hop was new. But it goes even deeper than that, though. Curtis Blow had a radio show on a college radio. I don't remember what college it was in New York. It's like a party show,
Mhm.
and so there were early on. That was like probably 79. There were these really interesting links between hip hop scenes and college radio. But some of the first radio stations to play hip hop regularly, to have dedicated shows, were on college radio. So Ken Whistler had the first hip hop show in Chicago, and then it branched out, into another couple guys took over and had this really long running show. Stretch and Babito on
Yeah.
Columbia radio station, of course, like foundational and huge in launching artists. But one of the things I wanted to do with the book was to show that college radio was never just indie rock or about launching indie rock musicians to the mainstream. So even though you have R.E.M. associated with this genre called college rock, at the same time that is happening, there is also this movement of hip hop onto college radio. They're happening really simultaneously with each other. And one of the things I love is that, so WBAU on Long Island and Hempstead and Adelphi University is where Public Enemy actually meets. That's where they come together. Bill Stepney was the program director, I believe. And they all had radio shows, and Run DMC would come and hang out in the station. And so that station was really instrumental in bringing the sounds of what was happening in the Bronx and Brooklyn out to the suburbs, and really helping to popularize and connect artists in new ways. And so it wasn't just that college radio was doing the promotional thing. They were also really helping to build scenes and to build networks and kind of the informational network. So Bill Stepney goes from WBAU and Adelphi. He launches the first beatbox chart at CMJ in 1983. And that's the first national chart that's tracking hip hop plays on radio. And a lot of the focus is college radio, but it's also looking at commercial stations as well. So there's always this kind of messy, blurry line between non-commercial college radio and commercial radio that is true for all of these genres. And I think one of the reasons that I wanted to restore hip hop's place as part of college radio was to show that college radio had always this breadth and depth, but at the same time, it was generating its own mythology as that breadth was there. And that these DJs, and it's really hard. It's really hard to be hard on college students, but they had their blinders on, and they, so they would incorporate they would incorporate hip hop into rotations, but a lot of times it would get, short shrift. So you'd have like one hip hop artist amidst a bunch of white indie rockers, basically. And so it never kind of broke through some of the indie rock dominance, as there was this commercial influence that these stations were developing.
Does that have something to do with the fact that when we think college radio, I mean, we do forget that there's this thing called HBCUs?
Yes.
And you actually talk about that in the book as well. Like, they existed. It's not like everybody at Howard was like, you guys heard the new Replacements album?
Yeah. I mean, Howard University in the 1970s was innovating the Quiet Storm format.
Yeah.
Right. So they're like hugely influential. But then you have all of these other HBCUs, and there is actually an archival project going on right now to make sure that those histories are preserved, because HBCUs always under-resourced and don't have the space and the labor to preserve a lot of this history. And so there's some really good efforts going on right now, because that was one of the challenges that I ran into writing the book, of like, where do I find the records tell this story. But a lot of the HBCUs, they had a very commercial format. They were playing more of like an urban contemporary format in some cases. Some were jazz stations. They had that same kind of breadth of content, and were interested in kind of forming those community connections, but also providing professional training for students. And so they're very much part of that larger profile of college radio as at the predominantly white institutions. And so it's sometimes it's hard because you have these students who really want to do the right thing. I start the book with the story about University of Chicago's station, which, if anybody knows the relationship between the University of Chicago and its surrounding community, it's kind of fraught. And they, we could talk all night about that. And so here's this radio station run by these students who really very genuinely want to provide real service to this community that is not served by media at all. But it's housed in this predominantly white institution. And so they're trying to do what they can, but there's no redistribution of media resources, right? They remain in the hands of these really powerful institutions. So even though the DJs want to do the right thing, they're kind of put in the position of trying to provide this service rather than, handing the mic over to community members. And so they, it's kind of a funny story. I ended up talking to the DJ who this happened to, and he said, he's like, you got everything right. Like, it was this moment. He was playing a Rudy Ray Moore sketch, which
yeah,
the sensuous black man, and it is quite explicit and it's very funny. But a Chicago Defender reporter was scanning through the station one night, and she came across it with no intro, like just cold, like, what is going on? Hauls the station manager and in front of Chicago City Council, where they proceed to have this like debate over what should be on radio. I mean, this is 1994. I mean, we're peak culture wars where, hip hop and is in the crosshairs of culture warriors, and, the politics of respectability and all this stuff is going on. And here's like these college students who are like, I thought the record was funny. And like, I don't know anything about Chicago politics, right? Like, yeah. So it's hard because I love that you notice the materialist nature of this history, and that institutions matter. It matters who owns licenses. It matters what the mission of these institutions are, and how they relate structurally to the places around them. And so even if the radio station is a really positive point of contact, kind of the larger structures are still very much in place, and they can always shift back.
Conan?
Yeah, I mean, that comes back to being in the community and part of the community, right? And like, what does that mean? It means different things to different people. And again, even when things can be fraught or even problematic when it comes time to community radio, when it's not, you're never going to match the values of everyone in the community. How would you do that? There's no way that you could. But that's the opposite of what we're all doing now, which is just the nichiest of niche, which is to say that any idea of the commons in general, like everyone's just trying to get followers, is really what it comes down to. And I think it's really interesting culturally how we still had a monoculture, but a lot of the, again, the music that's ascribed to like actual quote unquote college rock, again, like, your R.E.M, your Replacements, Pixies, so on and so on, that again, after 91 became mainstream music. And so then it's like, well, what does college rock mean then? What is that? Because think back to like College Music Journal, like that was a big deal. CMJ was like the thing for a long time. And then there's people like, what does CMJ stand for? College Music Journal. It's who's charting on these college stations. And then that too even got commercialized. And that became, well, if you play CMJ, then you can make a big splash, and then, yada, yada, et cetera, et cetera. And like, how far afield is that from like the freak who just like, I want to, play these Captain Beefheart records or like, or whoever, it doesn't matter like what it is, like I want to play Sun Ra for like 3 hours straight, which is, both a dream and a nightmare, maybe at the same time. And it's has nothing to do with telling people, where the food bank is.
There is something, kind of shifting gears a bit. You do, and I definitely want to hear what Conan has to say about this. You talk about it in your book, and I would say, and you don't say this explicitly, you do kind of do this thing where you say there's this attitude with college radio DJs that's proto hipster. I think hipster culture has been around since there's been culture. There's always been one person that's like, man, the wheel. You're so
over that.
2
That's so
centuries
last year.
ago. What the fuck is wrong with you, dude? Look at Arknock thinks he's cool because he's got a wheel.
Whatever.
Yeah, fuck that guy. I got fire. But there is something to be said about the more obscure, the cooler. And the more obscure stuff I can find, the cooler I am because you don't know it.
Yeah.
Commodifying your descent.
Yeah. Yes. Oh God. There's a lot of that. And I feel like this is a moment, and you talk about it with punk too. I forget who you're talking about that makes this comment. Because I can wear my beliefs in the 80s and late 70s with my mohawk. I can tell you that I'm against the establishment until I'm part of it. And there's something to be said about college radio. I feel like a movie like Pump Up the Volume is an homage to a lot of the stuff we're talking about here right now. You've seen Pump Up the Volume, Conan.
Yes. Talk about a proto hipster response. Yes. Did I base my whole personality on it for a few months? Yes. Look,
your personal mixtapes though. You didn't even have a ham radio. It was just you were being a douche to yourself.
Yeah, exactly. No, but I mean that's also Pump Up the Volume, right? That dude would totally have a podcast now. Or worse, like a Twitch channel or something. I don't even know,
that dude's Hassan Piker.
Right, exactly. Hassan catching flack now. All right. But Bill Cody brought up, that's my next point. Like the Pump Up the Volume soundtrack, amazing. That's an amazing movie soundtrack. And has songs that are college rock hits, as far as that goes. And the idea of I have something to say, something to share with the world, and this is my avenue to do it. Again, we've gotten 44 minutes in, not mention the FCC, not mention like the whole point of like low power radio was like not even like a thing. It was like, no, the FCC will just shut you down immediately because of commercial interests, right? Because we don't want people to be confused when our big commercial FM broadcast station, for 3 seconds you hear something that like maybe wouldn't be pushed through the normal payola with the cocaine and everything by the major pushers, and that was considered reason enough to just wholesale give up the airwaves. And so there wasn't such a thing as podcasts or streaming content like we have, like we're literally talking in this format right now. Didn't exist for a long time. And again, that's another thing that this newer generation who has grown up with it now doesn't ever think about, because it's like water for them too. Just like the instant availability of all music all the time, meaning that you can go on these deep dive binges and like learn everything about an artist or a band and like listen and consume the entire discography and then be over it the next week and on to something else. Whereas, do you remember having to be like, oh man, I got to save up for this record. I hope it's good. And then like sometimes you strike gold and sometimes you're like, oh. God damn it, it's not that good. Or like maybe there's just like one song that like would like is good or whatever. And that is like not even like a thing now because everybody has access to everything all the time. But the problem is it's a fire hose. It's a fire hose of information and worse than that, content coming at you all the time. So ironically, it's even more important to have people that filter that and that filter the noise, the wrong kind of noise out and can show you good stuff, which is what it used these college radio DJs, maybe inept as they might have been in broadcasting, were doing and continue to do. And again, the true freaks are the ones that are continuing to do it. Because again, it's like, okay, now your audience is dozens, not even hundreds. To be charitable.
Can you talk a little bit about the FCC in college radio? Because that's actually a really important part of your book.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and I think there's three terms there that you mentioned that are relevant. One is, gatekeeping is kind of a bad term that nobody wants to be the gatekeeper. That's the bad guy preventing access.
Exactly.
Obviously we need gatekeepers of sometimes, but I think, what we really need are curators and editors in this world of media that, was created by Gen Xers. Like, I still think that the social media is a construction, that it was all of the people who built it were listening to college radio. They were just trying to find their people, and they created something on the internet that allowed them to do that, which, doesn't have an FCC necessarily regulating content and the access. And so in this era of the culture wars, yeah, sure, I could talk a lot about censorship and Tipper Gore. Tipper Gore does show up in the book, but not exactly in the way that people might expect. Because yes, the chilling effect of the indecency rulings of the late 1980s and the back and forth and the wishy-washiness really did scare the crap out of college radio DJs who, I'm sure everybody here who did college radio will remember, some apocryphal story of like the FCC called and they said that that there was somebody had an F word on the song and they were going to send somebody down and we don't want the fine. We don't want the fine because there was that station that got like yanked off the air. Never happened. There's one station that got yanked sort of off the air for indecency or obscenity. That was WXPN at University of Pennsylvania in the 1970s. They did eventually get their license back and they became a quasi NPR station after that, but students were still able to do radio. Anyways, the real power of the FCC is in licensing. And most college radio stations in the 60s and 70s get on the air on these little 10-watt Class D licensed signals. Now, long story short, NPR and the big NPR broadcasters want to have big clear channel signals that go far. So 90.9 in Boston, WBUR, Boston University station, wants to be able to reach all the way out to Worcester. If you have a little college radio station in Framingham on 90.9, that gets in the way of the big broadcast. And so the FCC sides with the NPR and, the big broadcasters to get rid of the Class D license. And this is really the thing, though, that creates college radio as we know it. Because even though that small wattage signal goes away, at that particular moment, and I go into this more in the book, but a lot of college administrators, instead of saying, okay, we'll get rid of our radio signal, they upgrade the wattage. Or they move the signal to, down, or they let them continue despite, maybe there being interference. And that's what makes the music industry take notice. To say, oh, now it's not reaching, the 40 people that live on campus or who can like hear it kind of, through the pipes. Now it's reaching a whole college town. And now it's got this cachet. And now we're more willing to kind of fold it into our business model. And so there's always this kind of double-edged sword of here are these stations that exist non-commercially to educate that should not have a market function as a college degree, right? That college education, right? That we shouldn't think of it in the kind of transactional, like you're going to go get this degree and you're going to get X job with X salary. That's not what it's for. That's not what the radio stations were for either. But they become this kind of beloved thing and so valuable in supporting all of these underground scenes because the FCC were a bunch of dicks who sided with the big clear channels, big NPR stations.
You know what would be really fun if we could do, speaking of regulations, what if we could like play music videos during this conversation?
Oh yeah, that
We
would
could cut to like, and here's a great one from 1982.
right.
Here's Duran Duran with Rio.
I mean, imagine we were doing that during when we go through the years of music shows,
Oh,
that'd be
man.
amazing. But we can't. And the FCC, who are, like, as you mentioned, almost like the eldritch villain whose name you dare not speak lest they appear, right? Sorry, Jason. But also, they're the enforcement arm for all the people making money. That again eventually becomes like fewer and fewer corporations and things like Clear Channel, but like started off being regional aggregators, franchisees, et cetera, but like it just becomes blatantly no, like we just you don't have a seat at this table because you're not spending millions and millions of dollars in lobbying every year. Basically. I mean, and that the culmination of that, like really it's like you get like Bush's FCC appointee and Trump's appointee, where it's like, oh, you're not even hiding it, you're just like flat out like, oh no, here you go fellas, have at it. Low power radio. What? Yeah.
When does college radio and college radio bands become an official category to the point where something like MTV has to have a show dedicated to that music, which becomes 120 minutes? Was there any precursor to 120 minutes that you can think of, Conan? I can't think of anything.
In a video format, Night Flight.
That was still
Night Flight was
you watched Night Flight is where you could see black people on it videos.
Yeah.
That's I didn't know there's so many black people. If Conan, you really was watching Night Flight, you saw so many black people back in the day.
Oh, yeah.
You know who not Reba McEntire.
Noted black person Reba McEntire.
The black Reba McEntire.
Oh sure. I mean, you want to see like
Aretha Franklin, by the way.
Isaac Hayes. You want to see like what's
like Temptations that went solo that you never heard of.
Rufus Thomas. Yeah.
Who was the one? Was it the Temptation or the Four Top that had the video where he's so coked out in the first? They have the close up of his face and he's doing he's like grinding his teeth.
Yeah.
Which one is that?
But I would, I don't remember. But it's also you had from the punk rock world, you had like tape trading of like things like the Target videos and stuff like that. Like that's how I first like learned like what Black Flag looked like. It wasn't like I couldn't just like pull up Wikipedia and be like, oh, what are pictures of Black Flag? It was like, oh, they look like that, huh? Okay, interesting. And bands like the Screamers that never properly recorded. But there's a Target video of them, so you could like see a performance of them. And again, all this was way before the YouTube era. So like oftentimes it would be, especially with some bands that maybe unlike Isaac Hayes or something, where there's the image is everything. Like maybe you don't even know like what they look like. You have no idea because there's just not an image associated with the record, and especially like that, and that can be cool. I grew up, as you know, Jason, I grew up in the Kansas of California. But we had a modern rock station, and I would hear stuff like Shudder to Think, and I'd be like, what is this? This is insane. Like this is like totally nuts. And that would be mixed in with like 9 Inch Nails and like Radiohead and whatever. And it was all just put together, and I never thought of it as being weird at all. And it's something where I realize now what a treasure that was, that again, there was people curating this. It wasn't just like an automated playlist. I mean, now, all that stuff is AI, right? Like, oh, we don't need DJs at all. AI can just do it. Like one of the many quote unquote creative jobs that have just been taken away. But it's funny because the entire proposition of radio at all existing is because of the DJs, because the people playing the music. I mean, look at that. It was the last DJ, right? That Tom Petty record that came out, the last one. And it's like he wouldn't have a career if not for DJs playing his music relentlessly. Like sometimes it's to the point of where they're like, yeah, stop playing that Tom Petty music. Nobody's looking for it. And, you know, it became a populist hit in a lot of ways and owned FM radio for the longest time because people like the songs. And that's at the heart of it what it should be. But all of that focus and all of that energy and all of that creativity is all going to these wall gardens now. And it's depressing because if you're not on it, you're never going to see it. And everything is so balkanized. It's like, oh, I didn't see that because I'm not on Instagram, or, you know, I'm on Blue Sky. I'm not on Threads. So I didn't follow that one, you know, like whatever it happens to be. And that's just apparently the way we like it because we don't do anything about it.
Is that
Thank
true,
you for
Kate?
giving my TED talk. Anyway.
is that true, Kate? Or is he yelling at clouds?
No, it is true because I think, I mean, there's different types of music listeners and people who share music. And I think those of us who love college radio and loved mixtapes, we like a musical experience that tells a story across songs that's different than what an album will tell us. And so, and when we hear these kind of canned streams or canned radio, we're missing the thread. It's all just about like the hit making and the algorithms and, you know, this makes sense with that. And it's too logical. It's not messy enough. I mean, I would have a radio show and be like, well, today is brought to you by the letter P. And we would just go into the record outlet stacks and be like, this one starts with P. I don't know it. Like, I'm going to put it on. And you never know what you're going to get. And that was that kind of, that messiness of not always having to impress is, I think, something that we've lost. I mean, even 120 minutes, right, becomes about, you know, here's the new thing. And, you know, maybe it's not always about just what's the new. It's about the community that is being connected. And so while it's awesome to find the 12 other people out there who love this, you know, weird, you know, use of the mouth harp in songs alongside of the French horn.
Welcome to Zither Nation.
Yeah, it's great that those people can find each other. But you know, that's not how communities are formed. They're formed in the messiness and the unexpected connections that we make with one another. So, you know, narrowcasting responded to broadcasting, which was stultifying and weird. You know, not everybody's family looked like Father Knows Best. And so you have narrowcasting, that's sort of the new thing that responds to that. Both were constructed, you know, for advertising because the FCC bowed to the corporate interests. And so, you know, college radio and community radio were places that you could have both of those things. You could have the community creation and you could have the weird bands of freaks connecting over their stuff, but they still kind of had to get along. And coexist and make stuff happen together. And now we don't have to do that. And that's where, you know, I think we've kind of forgotten how to solve some of those problems.
Do you guys think the rise of things like the shows that were genre specific on channels like MTV, so like 120 Minutes, which is the quote unquote alternative.
Yeah.
So I think college radio, college rock is a word for a minute, and then it becomes alternative, because before that we called it alternative, we called it modern rock. Right.
Yeah.
So do you think that those shows tell college radio, okay, this is now what you are, because now you have a sound and a visual aesthetic?
There's a visual aesthetic to it too. Yeah. Well, I think that has a lot to do with it. Sure. Because,
and is that a problem?
Whether problem or not, it's what's going to happen, right? Because look at, I mean, it's not just a problem with rock too. Like it's the same thing with like hip hop and like the aesthetic. Like how quickly did they push like, you know, socially conscious hip hop out and like no, it's all about, you know, just getting money. That's what it's about. It's like, oh, interesting that's what you're promoting.
Jay-Z, right? Which is the king of getting money. He's literally a hip hop billionaire.
Yeah.
popularizes Che Guevara by wearing a Che Guevara sweater, I would say 10 plus years after leather medallions in the late 80s, early 90s. So I've never looked at quote unquote conscious hip hop as anything more than, for some people it was a righteous pathway, but I mean it's just super conservative.
Look, it's not my
nationalist
bag
rap.
at all in any way, shape, or form. But like, I mean, that said, like how
You
quickly
wanted to turn this show into 89 to 70 the 97.
like I think Public Enemy terrified a lot of people, like where it's like, oh wow, like what, it's not
Did
even
they?
like, well, because because it wasn't just about Public Enemy, it was about what else could happen after.
What else is going to happen when you have fake guns on stage? You going to get hit with a water gun? Who was scared of Public? Hey, if you were scared of Public Enemy, then you might be afraid of just regular black people.
Look, I mean, that's probably the answer, right? But I'm just saying that, like, the getting back to the larger point of like MTV driving like the image, because it's the idea was like that it's the TV part of it. The M, again, very little M in the MTV these days, but the M was almost ancillary. It was they were pushing an image, and the image also was the cool factor, like the MTV News, and it was like everything is like that now, but it's hard to overstate how different that felt than like the actual nightly news. And so because of that, they knew they could tap into an entire generation of music fans and get them watching and again, you can standardize it and sell it. Sure, absolutely. There's a lot of aspects to that, but I think there's also I don't know if you guys saw the Fallout show, the streaming content show about Fallout. Well, there's a Fred Armisen character who's just playing like classical violin music, and everybody is like trying to like stop him from doing it, and like he has a minefield like set up because he's it's the ultimate college radio thing where it's like he just wants to he really likes this violin music and really wants to play it, and he's just playing, and everyone's like trying to kill him to get him to stop doing it. It's such a small little like thing, but it made me laugh because it made me think about the specific kind of like near sociopathic behavior that people have towards like sharing the music that they love with other people, and that like what a specific kind of thing it is. That is not the same thing as being an MTV VJ. Like, okay, I'll give you like Matt Pinfield, right? He seems to actually like music,
He was, would you say he was an anomaly?
Yes, I would absolutely say that. Like even like Ricky Rackman and be like, do you really like him?
He does. He does. You know what?
All right.
I'm not ashamed to say it. I have fallen down. There's a Headbangers Ball page on Facebook that Ricky Rackman runs, and he is very honest about the bands that he digs and bands that he doesn't dig.
Yeah, man.
And he digs a lot. He digs a lot of people that we know personally, actually.
I don't know. I love that. I mean, less so with Kennedy. Emily do not speak these days. I think he's on Fox News, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
For me, she is the reason why I write some of these things, because it was so easy to project onto her all the things that you thought she was. And I was like, dude, this was just politics in the 90s.
The Tabarosa.
It's easy to be anti-establishment. It doesn't mean much. Like, you talk a little bit about the rise of the right wing, but when you think about right wing radio, especially after the deregulation, if you're a boomer driving and you hear a guy like Rush Limbaugh or Michael Savage talking, it's very anti-establishment.
Yeah,
and it doesn't sound like William Buckley, right? It doesn't sound like William Buckley.
Yeah.
And it's exciting, and it reminds you of all the people that were exciting and yelling at the establishment when you were younger. And I get it. I get why a lot of people got seduced by the dark side of the force.
Well, that's the thing with, so there's a movie, I think the title is The Boat That Rocked, but here it was called Pirate Radio, right? And it was about in the 60s, this is a real historical event that they broadcast this radio station, like playing all this like obscurist music from a boat, because they could skirt the laws, the broadcast laws by doing it. And of course, shenanigans ensue. There's Philip Seymour Hoffman's in it. It's a pretty good movie. But there's this incredible scene in this movie, which is only okay. at the end of it where it's like the boat is sinking, like the boat's there's a leak in, the boat is going down, and the Philip Seymour Hoffman character is going to go down with the ship, playing the music because he's that dedicated to it, and that obsessed with it, et cetera, and you just see this really well composed scene of all these ships coming forth like from the horizon line, and they're holding up signs that say, "We heard you." And for me, that's a perfect distillation of why radio, freeform radio, college radio, whatever you want to call it, is so important. That it's finding your people, it's finding your community, it's finding like your chosen family in a way that I understand that that's allegedly the goals of these social media wall gardens, but that's not what they're really doing. What they're really doing is extracting value from you and radicalizing grandma.
I'm curious though. So I went to an event. I mean, speaking of how this image of dissent, or this image of being radical, becomes mainstream by the late 90s, corporatized in all of its many forms. I went to a campus event, and it was a tour that was going on. So maybe you all remember this. It was
Lollapalooza.
Yes, it was a presentation, a panel event. And there were 5 presenters. I cannot for the life of me remember who the 5th one was. It was Kennedy, Chris Novoselic, Woody Harrelson, and Jello Biafra.
Oh, wow. Okay.
I know we're on this. And they each like got up and like talked about. So Woody Harrelson was like barefoot and high and talked about like legalization of marijuana.
Shocking nobody. Yeah.
Yeah. Chris Novoselic talked about the electoral college was evil. I don't remember what
his deal. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't remember what the other ones were. And I was just remember thinking, I had just seen like George Stephanopoulos like in the same arena or the same lecture hall, and I was like, what is this? And then they had like breakout events, and I was like, I'm not going to some breakout event. Like I went and got drunk with my friends at the radio station, So it was they kind of like skimmed the top off, and everybody kind of got their platform, and they got their ability to like say their thing about this thing that they cared about.
Yeah.
But it was just such a weird moment, kind of that pre-ish internet thing, and college radio was locked in this kind of existential battle against the corporate alternative rock stations. That's what I remember so much of. We hated KDF in Nashville. KDF was like the dumb station that played like Creed or something, and
which should be a war crime. But anyway,
remember that was like a distraction though from like going and actually doing.
What was the SST that had the corporate rock still sucks? Right? Those bumper stickers, which Greg Ginn is a prize himself anyway, but it was a great sticker. No, and there's also, so what you're talking about, I feel like is like everyone like got to proselytize about their like particular their particular area of interest, and maybe soliloquy on about that to people disassociating actively who only want to talk to them about things unrelated to the topic that they're talking about. Like nobody wants to see Chris Novoselic talk about proportional representation. They want to, they like Nirvana. They want to see him play the bass, and they're like, "What's this man talking about? I don't know." By the way, I've been in an elevator with that guy. He is really tall. And Mark Warner too. Mark Warner and Chris Novoselic in the same elevator.
Someone said, "Oh God, Creed, make it stop."
Yeah.
I was gonna start singing "Arms Wide Open,"
but someone like Stephanopoulos though, like whatever, he's fraud in his own way, right? But like he's someone that is ostensibly news related, and knows what the audience is there for, and ultimately, I think that part of the rebellion, tied into our generation, whatever, is largely, again, the boomers were so busy being like, oh, the slacker generation. Oh, here's all the reasons why your generation is terrible. Why they themselves still thought that they were like Easy Rider. It's like, I got news flash for you, son. You ain't no Easy Rider. You're more like the idiots that killed him at the end of Easy Rider. And it's led to an entire set of dynamics politically that is oh, well, the mainstream, there's nothing there for us, so we'll just build our own systems. And that's the best part of it, right? And unfortunately, some of that was put into some of the worst things in culture you could possibly imagine. But it was necessary because there was no end. They were never going to give up a seat of power ever at any time. And they still won't. Right. And so it's no surprise that everything had to be rebellion. But of course, like anything dealing with youth is constantly, you're rebelling against what happened before. Right. Kids today are like way more upset about like May December romances than like, you know, the fact that the people are like trying to get on car ads so they can get their music heard. Well, why wouldn't you? You want to get your music
Well,
heard.
I also
like, no, selling out used to be a thing.
There is no more selling out.
Yeah,
I think people call people sellouts in this world, but it's I find it. I think it was KRS-One that said this passively in an interview years ago. He goes, "Once you sell your music, you've sold out." And I do believe that at some point. It's like, if I really so about myself and I want to sniff my own farts, I could just make this stuff in my room and never let anybody hear it. I'm fine with that, right? There
was a lot of selling out discourse that was pretty dire, frankly. Like it was just like, oh my god, this is just a different kind of gatekeeping. Like
it's like, look, if you're selling your music, you're selling your music, right? It's a commodity in the market, and you want to get it to the people in the market. Like this show right here, right? I don't know who the fuck's gonna listen to this because I kind of exist in this world where I'm supposed to be watching the RNC and going Trump, and then I'm not. And then
can you believe this?
Yeah,
and then like question marks
appear. Let's say this show caught on, and Rolling Stone retweeted it, right? And it's like, oh, you sold out. It's like, okay, I guess that I didn't try. I didn't know that this academic woman that wrote a book that I just found interesting, you know, resonated. I really want you to
buy my book.
Like, yeah, you might sell a few copies. Yeah, exactly. She's all about it.
College radio,
right? Like that would be fucking rad if that shit happened. I don't think any of us would be sitting here like, oh, they sold out. We'd be like, oh no, this dude's just fucking
That's
rad.
what I'm saying, man. Record's still available. Go buy them. BigTimePrints.bandcamp.com. We got some t-shirts left too.
Like, what's a true motherfucker to you? Is the question I ask those people. Like, you explain to me what a true motherfucker is, and then explain to me how said true motherfucker is supposed to stay true in your imagination of this person. Like, we've gotten to meet so many people that we might have looked up to, and to find out how little money people actually make. And the same thing goes for this world here.
It's depressing.
There's not a lot of people with big ass shows, and motherfuckers think they're well. It's like, they're not making the kind of money you think they are.
Yeah.
Well, that's the thing, is that when college radio was at its peak, there was this ability for bands to, you know, they weren't going to be in mansions on, you know, getting on cribs or something, but they could make a living. You know, they could feed their families. They could live off their art. And that is what is gone. And, you know, speaking of R.E.M, so I interviewed Mike Mills for the book, and I tried not to be a complete dork. I probably was, but you know,
I'm sure he gets that a lot.
Yeah. It was very early on. It was probably embarrassing. But I asked him about selling out, and you know, there's this in 1985, the Del Fuegos sold a song to be played in a Bud Light commercial for the Super Bowl, and they got all kinds of crap for it. You know, I think in some ways they didn't continue on, and you know, it's because of that moment, and for many different reasons maybe, but that was a really big kind of breaking point. And R.E.M was very critical of them for doing that, and any band that would sell to a commercial. And Mike Mills said, you know, he's like, I would never criticize a band now for selling their music for, you know, a commercial or otherwise, because there is no way to make that money. You have to sell out if you want to be an artist, right? I mean, but I mean, this is the nature of, you know, art making in a capitalist world, right? You got to have patron or a university or an institution behind you. You know, I'm very lucky enough to have a job as an academic. You know, they're trying to squeeze as much out of me in the great speed up of higher education. And, you know, J.D. Vance calls us the enemy, I guess. Like, I sit in a basement, like, with my manky couch and, like, write books. Like, I guess I'm the enemy. I don't know.
Oh, look at you living high on the fucking government dime. What are you, supersizing your McDonald's too, you liberal terrorist?
Out here indoctrinating students into
my god, what radio. Agenda do you leftist Joe Biden loving liberal?
Well, So tagging back to the earlier note, I mean, I just remember, it did used to be such a thing. I remember people were mad when Lust for Life was in like a cruise commercial for like
Yes.
which like, okay, first of all, nobody in the Stooges was ever made any money, period. And that includes a lot of like, like Iggy's later solo records, et cetera, et cetera. First of all, Royal Caribbean, I think, I can't remember. See, that's what's great. I don't even remember what it was. I just remember being like, wow, they clearly never listened to the lyrics. It's about kinky sex. And like, that's very apparent.
They don't care. Remember
There's
when
a line says, of course I've had it in the ear before. Yeah, that says let's get on a boat.
Burger King commercial. Prince is in a credit card commercial that he never would have allowed when he was alive.
Yeah, but then that's something that like now it's considered an avenue of promotion. That's how you get hurt. That's the
Apple model
has replaced radio, right?
Yeah, exactly. The Apple model was a game changer when it was like, oh, you're in the Apple commercial. Feist.
Yeah,
you're in the Apple commercial. Oh, you can
career
do
maker.
2,000 seat rooms now. When you're playing coffee shops a week ago, now you got a goddamn bus.
Yeah, exactly. And like even the boomers like Lacey get into it. Remember when the Stones had to use "Start Me Up" for like. Microsoft. Well, I guess they forgot the line in that is "You make a grown man cry." They didn't think about that part.
What's funny is if you think of like Mick Jagger walking by, Mike, how much did you get when you sold that shit to Nike?
Oh, I know
that many zeros.
But again, I understand when people get upset when the things that they treasure, that they are parts of their identity, part of like their community, are taken out of context and shared with a greater world in ways that they wouldn't necessarily approve of, right? But then also, that Minutemen song being theme song for Jackass, that helped pay for D Boon's dad's operation. There's a reason for everything, because we do in fact live in a society.
You got to pay for things. I talked to Will Oldham, Bonnie Prince Billy, about the concept of selling out, and we kind of flipped it, and he said, the real sellout artist is the one who insists on sort of maintaining control over the message and meaning of their art. He's like, what do you mean? He's like, going to talk to somebody, and he's like, I see this in the song as a listener, and the artist says, no, it means that. And he's like, that's my song. He's like, no, they're my songs. Like, once you've put it out there, it becomes my song. We each make our own meaning out of it. And the real sellout is the one who tries to kind of rigidly hold on to the original meaning. That
no, it's like this.
You can't keep, anything can be commodified, but the art is able to go out and develop and accrue all of these additional meanings. Right. Even if it's Born in the USA being played at
just on a loop with that one. The chorus.
It's like, listen,
you ever listen to this song all the way through, have you?
I don't think they care.
Then they don't care.
The USA.
We were a good friend of mine and I were talking earlier today a lot about you, Kate, because I always get stressed out whenever I have book shows, because I feel like I give myself enough time to read the book, and then I don't, and then I'm running around the house scared that I haven't read the book, and I do everything but read the book. I clean like exercise equipment. I
think you're gonna say you listen to the audiobook on 3 times speed or something. But...
No, I can't listen to an audiobook and retain anything. I wish I could. That'd be cool. But no, I have to read the words. And then I was even more hamstrung because the copy you sent me, I couldn't highlight anything. I was like, motherfucker, I gotta. And then I was scared to ask you for permission to highlight.
It's like the 5 obstructions.
Yeah.
So we were having these like strategies.
We got into these like super deep conversations about selling out and different generations, and we were talking about a theme that you and I, Conan, hit on all the time, and that's how boomers really shoved down your throat how great that generation was.
Oh my God, I was literally just talking about it. Yeah, you're right.
And I said, we always bring up Forrest Gump, but there were so many more movies in the 80s and the late 70s, like American Graffiti and Eddie and the Cruisers.
Oh,
And
yeah.
then she brought up Barbie. She goes, Barbie is nothing more than just catnip for Gen X and millennials. And I was like, Barbie is just Eddie and the Cruisers for
That's all right. I don't agree with that in any way, shape, or form, but that's a completely different conversation. But I think there are like Stranger Things, right?
Yes. Uh-oh. The stranger thing is what happened to you.
The stranger thing is I was choking on nothing. Yeah. Once I got the mute button in time.
Like, Jesus Christ, I thought you got possessed. I was like, oh, wow. He's in the upside down.
Well, because there are things that it's, but it's also kind of weird. It's sort of like, because like, all right, it's like this version of like 80s nostalgia, like Goonies and stuff like that. But it's also kind of, weirdly like the Hot Topic version of that somehow. Like, I don't know. I'm not trying to like bag on Stranger Things. I'm just saying that, is it nostalgia? Because it's kind of okay. I saw the TV Glow, enjoyed the movie, but there's a lot I didn't enjoy about the movie, and part of it was like the depiction of these like be it Twin Peaks or like Adventures of Pete and Pete, Buffy the Vampire Slayer, these kinds of shows with these fandoms or whatever, where it's like, it didn't look like a public access show though. That's the thing. Like you're not nailing this. And I feel like you're expressing these ideas so eloquently in some ways and just failing it in other ways. And part of the reason why is because there's not a lot of archival media anymore, period, because everything is streaming content. So unless you own DVDs or Blu-rays of things like that, good luck even finding it. What's it streaming on? I don't know. Nothing, apparently. And that's now something that we decided to be like, because again, we don't do anything about it, right? So think about who's telling the story. I was talking about on the movie show we just did Furiosa, and I love that there's basically the human Wikipedia guy, aka Ask Jeeves is what I was calling him. That's like just there to give facts, and here's facts about motorcycles, here's facts about this and that, whatever. But think about the Romans and the Romans versus the barbarians. Like, for instance, the Celts, who did not have written history. They had an oral history. And the Romans wrote everything down, which is why the Vandals, who were provoked for like years and years and years, are literally, to this day, still synonymous. Vandalism, destruction of property. Yeah, after the Romans provoked them for a decade, they came and they sacked Rome after being like, hey, please don't do that. Please don't do that anymore. But the Romans wrote the history. So in this case, the boomers would be the Romans. I guess Gen X would be the Vandals, and I guess millennials are the barbarians. I don't know. It's a strange analogy, but the point is, whoever is writing the history books and whatever that happens to be, it's important, because otherwise history is lost. Then you get these kind of skewed perspectives that, again, like how I saw the TV Glow, was that it gets it right in so many ways and wrong in so many others. And it's just because it's coming through a filter, and maybe that's something that maybe Peter Bogdanovich was really mad about that or something, like or any of the other like American new wave filmmakers. Sure, but I think part of the problem of the spirit of independent radio, low power radio, college radio, et cetera, is that with the exception of these mixtapes, like it's a lot of it's been lost as a culture. Why is that important? Why are zines important? Well, they aren't now. Everyone is making a zine all the time. Here's what I had for lunch. RNC is stupid. Okay, great. And these things are meant to be ephemeral, because monetized content values ephemerality as well as overvaluing people's opinions and takes on things. What's your take on this? My take is I don't have enough information to speak about that at this time.
So why do you care?
And
that's my new answer. Why do you care what I have to say about this?
You could fill books with the stuff I don't care about. It's most everything. So that's why it's interesting to see, like, tying this back in to your book. I think it's interesting because, like, it's almost like lost years generationally. That you cannot overstate the importance of these college radio stations as lifelines to your people, to your chosen family, to like the things that were of interest to you, because you couldn't just open up your phone and have that.
Mhm.
Arguably, you still can, frankly, if you ask me.
You had to tune in and hope you could get the signal, right? You had to,
Yeah, exactly. Like
sometimes, like, yo, God, I gotta put the
get your
radio
little
by
brother
the
to go
window.
move the rabbit ears a little bit this way.
Yeah, it was a different time, man.
Exactly. No, put it over by the window. Yeah,
These
that's good. Now,
young
don't
people
move.
don't know the struggle of
I don't want to
pirated
hold this
cable.
here.
You know,
You
I
stay
mean,
there.
as a
Hold that
historian,
antenna.
I have to, always question the generational bucket thing. That as a unit of historical analysis, it's not useful, right?
Nope.
Yeah.
It's completely a marketing construction. I love showing my students the graph put out by the marketing agency that kind of comes up with the Gen X concept, and like the attributes and values that it ascribes to the then 3 generations, which were the olds, which were the greatest generation, the boomers and the Gen Xers.
Greatest, by the way, greatest generation. That's like, how Reed Richards could have been Stretchy Man, but he decided to call himself Mr. Fantastic.
Stretchy Man. Stretchy Man.
Mr. Fantastic. Because you got The Thing, ooh, harsh, but fair. Okay. The Human Torch, duh. The Invisible Woman, and Mr. Fantastic. Really? Okay. So that's the greatest generation, right? We're the greatest generation. Really? Really? Okay.
Which, thanks Tom Brokaw for that name.
I know.
Brokaw. Terrible.
Damn you, Brokaw.
I love letting students like rip these things apart and like, think about like, where do we get these ideas from? But the nostalgic person in me thinks there is something really real. It's not even a Gen X that I think, and we 3 of us belong to the micro generation of the Xennials.
Yes.
The Carter babies, basically.
Yeah.
That fall between Gen X and the millennials, because we had within our reach that kind of broadcasting era where we had the same kind of villains that the boomers had and that the older Gen Xers had. But then we also had the same kind of tech savviness of the millennials, and so we sort of fall into this weird micro generation that, and I hate also to be like technologically deterministic about it too, because everything is not determined by our technology. The whole digital disruption thing is something I try to bust open in the book too, that it's not digital streaming like comes and destroys college radio. It's that college radio was always contested. It was always being fought over. And what was it going to mean? And, now college students, they've got a whole new set of problems that they've got to contend with, which they can't, make a living at all, or pay for their college educations. Most of them can't even do college radio because they got to work 30 hours a week, just to get by. And so, we need to provide these spaces for them to develop their modes of dissent and whatever that's going to look like. And I think radio is a tool in that, as it was for us, who are, kind of caught in this weird thing. But I don't know. I'm going back to my circling back around to the Xennial microgeneration is real. It's defined by technology.
Can I tell you that the best name I heard for it is what just popped up on the screen, which is the Oregon Trail generation, which I was like, that tells you everything you need to know. Because you grew up with computers, but not the internet.
Yeah.
The internet was around, but it was like BBSs and games. And then it became like, okay, I'm a fully formed and grown adult, and now we have like the beginnings of Web 2.0 and whatnot, and sites and like pets.com and stuff like that.
Okay,
plus, I liked Oregon Trail, and I still do.
I do.
I've died of dysentery. Oh,
I want to. We've been going for an hour and a half, and I want to thank you, Kate, and thank you, Conan, for again being Eddie Kane and sliding through in the last minute.
Yeah, man.
You are the best 5 heartbeat.
I come through in a clutch. That's my deal.
Your main thesis is that college radio is not over. All we talk about is Spotify and charts, and terrestrial radio's dead. And here you come with some newfangled theory that college radio, which I haven't turned on forever, but that's just because I'm old, is not dead and is very alive. Tell us why you believe that.
Because it's still all over the place. Students are still doing college radio. Community members are still doing college radio. Low power FM has been opened up again. There was another window where you could get a low power station, and I think there's enough energy. And I think, cassette tapes came back, so why can't radio?
God. You're right. Yeah.
But I think, there's a very, very big asterisk on that, which is what I just mentioned, that, that college students need to have the space and the time to do college radio, that we need to value investments in our public goods, which includes colleges and universities and radio stations. Because, even NPR stations, they're in trouble too. And we need to have a breadth of content. We need to have a breadth of media. We need to have multiple points of access. And I think, and college radio is one of those tools within that larger media ecosystem. So yeah, it's not going to be the place to find all of your music all of the time. We have many different ways that we can do that, but it was never just about that. It was about many, many, many things. I mean, the Quiz Bowl in 1952, and the college chorale was part of it. For all of its faults and really terrible programming, boring, stultifying, but also engaging and exciting. And I tuned into the Harvard station recently. I'll call them out, and it was like 9 o'clock. They play mostly a jazz and classical format, and so I was going to kind of relax. And there was a song, and then it kind of trailed off, and then there was some dead air. And then I realized that there was mumbling happening. And it was because the DJ hadn't put their mic all the way up. I was like, this is the best.
Awesome. Awesome.
This is terrible radio.
So making some Bush League mistakes. Yeah. That's great.
Like, turn your mic up. Turn your mic up.
Yeah. Awesome.
But, so, and I have students who are doing college radio. I sent a message to them. I'm technically a member of my college radio station. And that's the other thing, is that it doesn't just need to be college students doing college radio. But,
absolutely. I mean,
college radio.
like I said, every one of our releases still gets physically mailed out. CDs.
How do I get on your college station, Kate? How do I become a guest in your college station?
Oh.
I could have a show, and you could call in, or we could record it, and I'll play it. And I'll bleep things out, because the FCC is still listening and will find us.
Yeah, they are. In fact, say it 2 more times and they'll appear.
Could we take calls?
Yeah, if anybody's listening.
Damn, that's fucked up.
WXPL 91.3 Fitchburg.
There you go. Take that.
There you go.
Rosenstein town. This is Fitchburg, bitch.
They call it the Dirty Burg. What is it?
I think that's a slur.
It's north of
I was gonna say it sounds like a sex act, but yeah.
Oh,
I do like that.
Oh, that's horrible. Oh man, the Dirty Burg.
Didn't think it was nasty like that.
That's not even legal in 8 states.
Right, exactly. I think the Republicans just outlawed that.
I just heard Tim Scott do a whole speech about why they should be outlawed.
Yeah, but it's alive and well, but it doesn't have the influence it used to have, right? But you still get the true heads, the true freaks, if you will, and
and the community connection.
Yeah,
I mean, I want Fitchburg. We've got town and gown divisions. There's the university, and then there's the town. You can't unhear it now.
Yeah, we're reading the same comment. We're not laughing at that.
Okay, all right. I get it.
We're not laughing at
you. I think they should bring in members of the community. They should have, I'm sure there's some club DJ in Fitchburg who would come and do, a show from 10 to midnight on Thursdays, and bring that guy in, make those connections. Like, why
it's
not?
just shitty flute. Yeah, okay. Whatever you want to do, man. It's all you.
Andre 3000 just showed the world that people can believe that a mediocre Yanni record is like really cool if you give it a cool title.
I thought you were going to call it Zamfir. I was like, Zamfir.
Zamfir, the master of the pan flute.
Yeah, master of the pan
Man,
flute.
okay, there was another guy that played like flamenco guitar on all those commercials too. There was Zamfir, the master of the pan flute.
Those commercials seem like hours long too. Like it would just go on and on
This
and
is
on.
this is what I talk about.
Like, how much can you do? Like, I don't care which songs are on the Zamfir record. I get it. He's playing the pan flute. He's a master of it. Okay.
He's like a human nymph though. He's got
Yeah.
the pan flute. Like, who the fuck plays an ancient instrument like the pan flute?
I'll tell you what, if you say the word Zamfir, everyone says master of the pan flute.
If you say it one more time, that motherfucker shows
He's
up
gonna
in
show
your
up like
closet,
Beetlejuice rules. Yeah. Exactly.
serenading you and your wife. You're like, what the fuck?
A horror movie, but you just hear a pan flute off in the background. Oh no, he's in the house.
You're like, honey, what kind of freaky dicky shit are you into?
There was a fundraiser at one radio station, and someone's college roommate called in and donated if they played an hour of Gordon Lightfoot.
Wow.
They did.
Oh man, they got to pay those bills. Wow, an hour. Ooh.
I don't know if you guys feel the same way, but we grew up and we knew, and this isn't to say some generations better or we're better. It's just an observation. When we saw the made for TV stuff come on, the infomercials, it was like, we're home late, we're up too late,
Right.
change the channel. Damn, I wish we had cable. There were so many thoughts that crossed your mind. It was never, oh, dude, what a great job. And I feel like what we see now with Instagram and quote unquote influencers, because the people that you would see pitching, I remember there was people that were pitching this video called Where There's a Will, There's an A. Do you remember that, Professor Olney's, where there's a will, there's an A? It's like, I can take your dumb fucking kid from an F dropout burnout to an A student. You buy these 18 cassettes, you put them in front of the VCR, bam, he's smart, right?
We'll give him a training montage like Rocky.
Yeah.
Except for
you're illiterate, Rock. You're never gonna read it.
Burgess Meredith's yelling at children with poor grammar.
But the same cat that I saw like pitching this bullshit was then later pitching some like skincare thing. It's like, oh, does your same idiot kid have bad skin? Guess what? For some reason, I know all about that shit too.
Yeah.
Look, I got the bad skin guy with me here.
We got it all. What do you need? We have it.
It's
like one of those stores that is like, you get pizza and you get your taxes done and like repair your phone. It's all in the same place.
You want a tattoo as well?
Yeah, we got that too.
It feels like with influencer culture, they're like, how can I be that same billboard? Whereas for us, I was like, ooh, who wants to be that guy? Where all you do is you're a pitch man. Ugh.
Yeah.
That is the desired job.
Yeah.
I was writing something out at a cafe out here in Mexico, and someone was like, oh, what do you do? And I was like, oh, I have a YouTube channel. And there was like a 11 or 10-year-old, and the kid was like, oh, you're a YouTuber? I was like, not in the way you think. That's cool.
No, my show's good.
Doing unboxing videos.
Yeah, exactly. Like, I'm not playing a video game. And he was like, it doesn't matter. And then the mom goes, look, honey, he's an influencer. And I was like, ma'am, I'm not.
You take that back or I'll fight you right now.
I'm not any of those things. Like, just look at me. Like, there's nothing influential about me. But this idea that, oh, I can be an influencer. Like, what does that mean? What do you want to influence? I just people. Yeah. I just want to be the thing. It's like you want to be the guy that's selling the videotapes.
Exactly.
That's where we are now. This is the derivative of us going, oh, fuck these infomercials. These infomercials.
At least Zamfir played the goddamn pan flute. He's the master of it, even, I hear. Thank you.
At the heart of all kids these days laments, though, is a deep antipathy towards consumerist culture.
Yes.
So you're just, mahjong tournaments in the 1920s. Kids doing.
Yeah. Lighten it up.
You're just wasting your life playing mahjong. When are you gonna get a real job? I'm gonna be a contender, pop.
Mahjong. Wow. Yeah. Good. Having nothing to do with mahjong, I'm going to pick up a copy of this book.
I hope so,
It sounds great.
please.
Oh my god! Wherever you are watching or listening to this show, thank you, Conan.
Yeah,
Wherever you're watching, wherever you're watching or listening to this show, there are links in the description to Kate's book. Welcome to the underground, Conan. You'll be back here Saturday, where we'll be talking about 1982.
That's right.
It took me 4 hours, well, exactly 3 hours and 96 minutes to put that playlist together.
Probably less time than we're going to spend talking about.
I hope so.
It's got a lot to cover. It's a crazy year.
That year, and I don't know why this year had so many releases.
No, it's wild.
I think it's like 21 hours long is the playlist. So what we do, Kate, I put one song from every release I can find from that year, every album. I don't sing when it gets to singles, but one thing I found in the 80s, Conan, and I know you're not going to like it, but that's okay. I just give a fuck.
I love the front loading on this. Can't wait to hear.
Well, you're not going to like it. You're not going to like it. If you liked it, I'd be like, you know what? Then you've been living a lie and tell all these people that you love Michael McDonald. So I really like what you people call yacht rock.
What do you mean by you people? Yachters, actually.
The whites.
Yeah.
Yachters, yeah, yachters. Yeah, yachters like yourself. All those Conan, all those Central Valley yachters.
Yeah, exactly. Can't wait to sail the seas of the Central Valley.
Their fluters on board.
It's a band flute in the mix. Yeah, really tied all together. Good callback.
But there's this Japanese version of it that I was discovering and looking at all these record releases in 82 that hits so fucking hard. I was like, God damn, who the hell is this person? Toshi Yashimoto. This motherfucking shit is fire as fuck. I've never heard of it before. There was about 6 or 7 records of this. I didn't even know it was a thing. They called it City funk or some shit like that. It had its own little genre. So dope. That was the one thing I got from that. Also, 82 is a year where some of the biggest records of all time. Prince's 1999 comes out. Thriller comes out. There's another record you named off, but even when we said 82.
Yeah, I mean, there's Maiden and Priest, right?
Oh fuck! Why did I forget? Breaking the Law.
Yeah. Versus Commissioner Burma, Rio, Duran Duran, a little bit called Duran Duran.
Rio fucking rocks, by the way.
Yeah, it's great. Have you ever heard the for a while during the peak COVID, bass player was just doing run throughs of Duran Duran songs to the
shit,
camera?
John Taylor?
Yeah, it's actually awesome, and that's when I realized. Oh my God, he's
Beast.
playing a prog song underneath that. He's like, and I was like, holy crap. By the way, man still looks pretty good considering how old he is too. I mean,
beast. I didn't realize how much of a beast he was.
No joke, man. Combat Rock Clash, by the way.
There's also 82. I thought was a good year to prime you guys because it's the tail end of disco, so it's still influencing a lot of music.
Yeah.
So a lot of music, even if it's on the more rockier edge, still makes you move. And another thing we were talking about today while talking about your book, Kate, and maybe we can end on this happier note.
Oh, by the way, the conceit of the show is we talk about a certain year, like records that came out that year. That's the show. It's great. It's the easiest thing I've ever done in my entire life because I've been prepping my whole life for it. So I love it. It's great. It's just pure fun.
We were talking about dancing. And in listening to all this stuff from 82, like the whole time I'm like God damn, like finding this shit from Brazil. I'm like, God damn, there was find some shit from South Africa. There was some dude that had a song with Stevie Wonder. I'm like, what the fuck? I was like, there's so much dope music that came out this year.
Yeah.
And I was thinking, I was like, even metal. I'm a huge metal fan. I love Metallica of a certain era. That being said, that first record is 4 on the floor, grooving, shake your butt music, because people go, people got to move. Go to the show, they got to move.
Yeah,
and people just danced. And Eddie Murphy destroyed dancing for a generation, and Carlton put the nail in the coffin. Because when Eddie Murphy made that joke, white people got one move, is this. Then you get real fired up and you spin around. What's funny about that is, if you know anything about cinema, when you record a dancing scene, there's no music.
Yeah.
And this move is on beat to everything. Watch any movie from the 80s. I don't care who's in the room. If there's all black people in the room, they're all doing this move, right? Because when there's no music playing, you'll always look like you're on beat.
Mm-hmm.
But that became, oh, that's the white people dance. and then Alfonso Ribeiro, who's a professional dancer, makes a joke out of that in Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. So for now 2 generations, people go, oh, you can't move. But that's the easiest thing you can do when you hear a song. You're like, oh shit, right? Yeah. But you know, Carlton made you scared to do this shit. You don't want to be caught doing that anymore. And the fact that we live in the surveillance state, and God forbid you're caught having fun. Who wants to dance anymore? So even music that historically has been danceable music isn't really that dancey anymore. Right. Unless you have a choreographed routine ready for it. And listening to some of these older years of music, because I think 94 is like the last year on this list of the 15 greatest years of music. It's kind of sad. Like, oh man, do kids even dance anymore? I'm not talking like routine. Like, is there a dance that's out that just everybody can do? That everybody could do this?
Well, my favorite are the songs that explain how you do the dance in the context of the song.
Yeah.
I always wanted to write a song like that.
That was perfect. Even Exodus did it with the Toxic Waltz. Right? Like, hey.
Although I gotta say, you know, as great of a song it is, "Land of a Thousand Dances," too many. That's too many dances for that. I don't want no 1,000 dances. You know, I'm good with like 1, 2, fine. Like 10, all right, kind of push it. 1,000? Come on, what is this, homework?
Like I just like listen to that playlist. And again, I don't put it in any effing order. It's not by genre. It's literally just whatever name popped up on the list of record released. Then I put it on the thing. So there's some songs like, oh shit, you can move to this. This was fun.
Like Pac-Man Fever, which came out in 1982.
Dude, but Conan, you understand all the cocaine at that point. You're like, man, when you're releasing all this good music, maybe you just needed a stimulant.
Yeah, there you go.
I don't know, the disco thing. You know, remember that thing that went around social media where it was like, what was the the Hot 100 song the week you were born?
Yeah, it was like a generator that would change.
Yeah, my husband was born in October of 77, and like the one song was number 1, like all of 1977, something like that, except for 1 week in October when Miko's disco version of the Star Wars Cantina song.
Hell yeah.
It is toe tapper.
Good, come get some. Wow.
This comment by Prester John says it all. I recall dancing with a chick who performed choreographed video style dancing. I was like, yo, what the fuck? Stop that shit and dance normal. Like I saw this video of these like young white girls having a dance off. I mean, they were young, like teenagers, and it looked like a high school maybe. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, that's some high level moves. Like you guys took lessons for that. That's too much. That's too much. It's okay.
Just like 1,000 dances. I want to go to the land with 10 dances, not 1,000 of them. It's fine. It's too many.
I mean, the indie rock like punk show bop is like considered a dance. Like just like at a show, like you just sort of get the sense of it. Like I'm into it. Like,
yeah, exactly.
But how scared are people to have fun even at a show like at Conan?
Serious.
Like this. Like I feel like I've earned the right to do this because everything hurts. Right?
Because you're an influencer. That's why you've heard that.
With that too.
Canonically, we established that.
Yeah. Oh, dude. When I watched you and I saw those empty dead cases on the floor, and Conan looked at me and goes, you get the feeling to do it again? I was like, nah, because you looking at you making my back hurt right now.
Moving on that year. Yep.
Like everything about your life right now is making my everything hurt.
Yeah, well.
But thank you guys so much for hanging out with us again. Wherever you were watching or listening to the show, Kate's book is the first. It's the first thing. I don't even write the title of anything. It's just the link to the book. Go get it. Conan and I will be back Saturday morning to talking about the year 1982. That playlist is already up, and Toussaint got mad at me because she goes, Jason, are you even promoting these playlists? So every year that we've done, and even the side shows, there's a playlist for that. There's a playlist of just metal and punk from 1984. There's a playlist of all the records released in 1984. There's a playlist from everything in 1967, 1979, 1993, 1994. Pretty soon, we have to have face-off years.
That's right. We'll do brackets. Yeah.
We need to have, because I want to know, is 93 a better year than 94?
We still don't have a name for the damn show, too. That's the thing.
We
that
don't
blows
have
my
a
mind.
name
How
for
many
the
episodes
show.
of this then? But
I do have college radio playlists, by the way. There's 3 of them. One's 35 hours long. So
Jesus Christ.
Wow.
They're drawn from the archives. So
yeah. There you go.
Some stuff on there is bad.
I was gonna ask how much Zamfir content's on.
Yeah. There's a lot of music on these playlists.
A lot of pan flute
that I hate. I would say 85% of the music on the playlist I can give a fuck about. 1967 could have been called Jason Doesn't Give a Fuck.
I was definitely doing the heavy lifting on that one.
You could have called it Conan Gives a Little More of a Fuck, but a lot less than you think.
Talk some trash on boomers, it's all good.
Well, thank you guys again, and we are out.
Thank you.